Hello, everyone. I'd like to start with a question. Have you ever had a moment in your life when everything you thought you had planned, like down to a T, suddenly changed? You know what I'm talking about. The kind of moment where your future that you've mapped out since you were a kid, step by step, suddenly changes. It looks different than anything that you had planned for. I like to think of these moments like this. Imagine your life is a perfectly crafted cocktail. Every ingredient carefully measured, the career you plan, the future you imagine, how many kids you're going to have, the life you believe you were building. Everything carefully balanced, everything exactly how you designed it. And then suddenly, one moment, one conversation, one unexpected experience shakes everything up like a dirty martini. Well, my martini moment came when I was 18, heading to college. And that is a time that in itself is very pivotal because, of course, as an 18-year-old mind, you have everything planned. You know everything in order. You've got it figured out. You have the drive to get it done. That was my story. And this one thing shook me up. So let me explain. I knew very early on that I wanted to be a medical doctor. Initially, it was a pediatrician, and by the time I got a little older, closer to graduation from high school, I wanted to be a coroner. I was just fascinated by the science, the human body. It just, it was where I knew my life was going. So, as I graduated, I'm on track to do that. I knew I was going to Emory, like it was no questions asked, except for tuition was extremely crazy. So I had to pivot. And in pivoting, excuse me, in pivoting, I ended up going to another school. And because I was enrolling in that school a little bit later, I had to pick what from what classes were left. And I ended up being a freshman in a junior's level genetics class. This was not clearly a part of my plan, but I start school, I'm in the class, I'm doing what I can, and it's not going how I thought it was going to go. I am struggling. So let me be clear. I do feel that I'm a very smart woman. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I definitely was not expecting to struggle the way I was struggling in that class. So I found myself doubting something I had believed about myself for years. Was I really meant to do this? This would not be the first time in my life that I asked myself this question. But this moment was absolutely pivotal. Was I on the right track? And so I'm reflecting and kind of in my head, I live there. And my advisor comes to me around the same time and she says, "Hey, I need to meet with you." And I'm like, oh Lord. You know, it's that uneasy feeling like, what you got going on? You start running your grades down, like, okay, well, these aren't too bad. Well, this one is a miss. And so you're in your head. You're thinking. And so I walked into the meeting. We had a conversation, and she said something that changed my life. She looked at me and said, "You are a clearly intelligent woman. But I noticed you were struggling in this particular class. At the same time, I see you doing extremely well in your psychology courses. See the way people come up and talk to you. I see how people are naturally drawn to you. You give thoughtful advice. It seems like psychology comes to you very naturally." So here's the interesting part. I had actually been thinking along those lines. Never said it to her. She had no idea what was going on. And so, in that very moment, I took that as alignment. It didn't feel like criticism, it felt like confirmation, like clarity. And so, it was that moment when the glass stopped being shaken up and they were able to really I was able to push my life forward. I was able to look inside and maybe, okay, maybe this is gonna be a good drink. Everything changed. In that moment, I declared my major as psychology, and I have not looked back from that point. Now, if that had only been the pivot in my life, okay, great. But we understand ebbs and flows in life, and that is not the only time that I was shaken up like that martini. So after graduating from college, I decided to attend graduate school in Nashville, which was a major move for me. Um, the Once I solidified my major, I, found my village and my friends and, my support system in undergrad. And so this shakeup was a little bit different because although I am comfortable with being on my own, I'm moving to another city where I don't know anybody because I did the exact same thing in undergrad. I think it was just, I was so focused on my plan that the idea of not having my original village, which would be family, it wasn't a thought for me. I'm just outside, excited to explore the world. And there's undergrad. Well, with grad school, it was a little bit different. I am in a new city, and although I had met a family friend through my dad, it literally was not a space where I knew anyone. I was having to find new friends. Everything felt unfamiliar. It's the first time I really was having a hard time finding a job. I'm hearing things like, oh, well, you have too much experience, but it's not enough experience to actually get a job in my field. I'm balancing money and figuring things out, walking through, sorting things out, and making new friends. My grades are doing extremely well. I'm not having an issue on that end, but everything else acclimating to those things, it is a struggle. It felt like I was stuck between two worlds. Like I had this education, but the opportunity is like just a thought. It's a joke. And so you know, I began to sleep more. I had picked up weight. I just was disconnected from who I normally am, the things that normally ground me or make me feel my best. I wasn't able to show up in those capacities. And I remember thinking, like, what is going on? I gotta do something different. This is weird. I don't like this feeling. I don't know what this is. I gotta get it together. This is not where I thought I would be. I gotta get something together. And so my mom says, you know, you picked up some weight. What's going on? You know, my family actually did not live there, but I don't have the kind of village, even my friends, I don't have the kind of village that even though they can't see you every day, they don't know that something's wrong. And so they were able to check in, like, something's off. And so they reminded me in that moment, like, you got some reflecting to do. You got to look inward. And I had to be honest about myself. Like I was really struggling. I again live in my head. And so introspection is never hard for me, but it's sometimes very hard in moments where things again are not aligning. You're being shaken up. The things that normally ground you, the ingredients that you normally use for this particular drink are not present to use. Something was out of stock at the store. Any of that. Everything is a mess. And so you're trying to put this drink together that you normally enjoy or that you've been waiting for in a way that you normally do, but you can't because the things that you need are not there. And so um, I had to pivot yet again. I had to, this moment in life kind of actually taught me to slow down and like not take things for granted, to accept that plans don't always align. Um, the first time I came across that bridge in undergrad, it didn't click to me the same way. This time though, it was loud and clear. Like, yeah, girl, you got plans, but that's not where you're supposed to be. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. It's not really how you are supposed to be moving. And so this particular pivot was a signal guiding me back toward my alignment with who I really am. Um, and it's something that most of us are not taught. We're taught that success means having a plan, staying on track, stick with your path, don't change the direction. Because if you pivot, that means something went wrong. There's failure in the midst. But what if the opposite is true? What if the moments that disrupt your plans are actually the moments that reveal who you're meant to become? Think about it. Every single one of us have had moments in our lives where the path suddenly changed. A job ends, a relationship shifts or ends, a dream evolves. When this happens, we're often socialized to interpret it as failure. But what if these moments are actually invitations? Invitations to rediscover ourselves, invitations to create something new, to paint a different picture of our lives. Because life, I have absolutely learned, is much more like a canvas than a checklist. The experiences we go through, the struggles we navigate, the moments that we force, these are things that help us to rethink who we are. They're adding color to the canvas. Some of those colors are bright and joyful, and some are darker and more difficult. But together they create something meaningful, a picture of a life that is authentic. It's your life, a life that is aligned, a life that reflects who we truly are. So this brings me back to the martini. Most of us spend our lives trying to keep the glass steady, trying to protect the ingredients or the plan, trying to make sure every ingredient is exactly the right measurement. Sometimes the most important moments in your life is the moments when things are off kilter, when you pour a little bit too much of this, too little of that. It's gonna have a different taste, but it's still a good martini nonetheless. So, like a dirty martini, when the glass starts spinning and you suddenly see things you've never noticed before, new flavors, new possibilities, new directions, you have a choice in that moment. You can fight the shape, you can resist the change, you can force life to be what you originally had planned because it's comfortable, or you can pause, take a breath, do some introspection, take a sip of whatever this new cocktail is. Maybe the same cocktail, just a slightly different taste. Because sometimes the life you never planned is the life you were always meant to live. And when you realize that, pivots no longer feel like interruptions. They feel like alignment. They feel like authenticity. They feel like fulfillment or happiness. So the next time life shakes your plans up, remember this. That shake may not be the end of your story. It may be the moment your real story begins. Thank you.